Flight from Rome is the book that landed Paul on the map. It was released in 1996 and was wildly popular. I really like it personally. I recommend it. The book takes place in a newly Christianized Rome in the year 360 AD, and it revolves around a cult, a Christian sect called the Exhedonists, and they are led by David of Ephesus, or Ephesus? I don't know how to say it. His teachings sort of revolve around Jesus being their Lord and Savior, asceticism, the rejection, of worldly pleasures, and the fact that there should be no middleman between a man and his God. So like priests and cardinals and popes, all that, those higher ups, they reject that. They think that it should just be faith alone. And Rome has just been starting to make those sort of gold leaf, paintings of Jesus, and funneling a lot of money into the depiction of him and making him, fancy. You look at all those paintings, those classical, early Christian paintings, and it's all riches when really Jesus was like a carpenter who like couldn't afford shoes and stuff. So the Exhedonists, they sniff a selling out. They think basically, okay, well, although I love Jesus, I feel like my religious freedom will soon be compromised by the man, like Christianity is no longer hipster. They were around for when they were just of constant threat of being kidnapped and fed to the lions, right? So that religious drive that they have is now sort of it's been gentrified to a class of people that they reject entirely, the higher ups. So led by David of Ephesus, they flee Rome, they flight from Rome. They leave the sinful hotbed of Rome and travel across the desert on foot in search of a world untouched by sin. Spoiler alert, that doesn't exist. Most of the book takes place of them in the desert, and I think it would be a really good play because it's really dramatic. Like the dialogue is dramatic as hell. It's like King Lear shit. It kind of reads like a Platonic dialogue. It's like David preaching and calling upon people and being like, what do you think? And they're like, yeah, okay, cool, I agree, keep going. They're just kind of but in the end, while they're in the desert, the cult followers realize that the man that they hated so much has left Rome with them in the shape of David, the preacher, the middleman between them and their God. So they get together and stab him 40 times in the chest, Ides of March style, and leave him to die in the desert. And it's hinted at in the epilogue that they all die without someone to lead them out of the desert. I guess none of them could read a map. Yeah, this book is dramatic, poetic, tragic. I personally love it. I'm gonna read out a section. This is on page 52. Hear me, disciples, he preached like thunder, standing atop an ox-drawn cart older than himself. No longer will we tolerate this gross disrespect of Christ's teachings. These glittering patricians care not of what he taught, but rather gawk at the gilded halo surrounding him and call themselves pious. He spat. No longer. How can we sit here and criticize with no action? To reject is to reject is to reject. His strong arm shot up defiant to the sky. I reject, his disciples echoed. Then act with me in flight, a flight from this whore's bed of a city, ripe with hypocrites and sin. We shall fly across the desert in our tattered rags like Christ did, and we will not rest until we find sanctuary fit enough for the likes of true piety. Who is with me? And everyone's like, yeah. And then they leave that night. The biggest criticism with this book is the historical accuracy. I didn't really notice it. I'm not a huge history buff, honestly, but so apparently the Roman emperor that is described in the book is not the Roman emperor during that time. David always mentions Dante's Inferno, and apparently Dante's Inferno was written in the 1400s. One of the characters has a Doberman, and Dobermans weren't bred until the 1800s. Little things I personally don't care about. Maybe if you get annoyed by that stuff, then maybe don't read it, but overall I recommend it. I give this book a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I think the one dock would be it is a bit repetitive. there's only so much of this shit I can read. I mean, I still like it, it's still good, but it's like they kind of just say the same kind of stuff over and over again, at least that middle part of them in the desert. I think this book really does encapsulate a lot of Paul's biggest characteristics. His obsession with Christianity, his obsession with Shangri-La, his obsession with the man. Not so much, he's not so obsessed with the man himself, but more what the man can do to people who should be on your side, you know, corruption, buying them out, shit like that. Also just how dramatic he is, that's another one.